Hi, this is Jurgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis Vlog. This episode is about how you can use a simple hypnotic experiment involving amnesia and post-hypnotic suggestions to help someone see that they're not fundamentally their own thoughts, to help them see the illusory nature of the self. So let me start off by getting a couple of client stories to help you see how this can be very useful. I had a client a couple of years back who had a lot of anxiety, a lot of internal dialogue, and panic attacks, and problems sleeping. So she came in, and during the session, she had some strong insights, and we both entered into this field together of pretty profound stillness. And when she left my office and went into her car, she made a startling discovery, and that was that the tinnitus that she had had for over a decade was no longer there. Now, I had no idea she even had tinnitus, and in her model of the world, there was no there was nothing to suggest that you could do anything about tinnitus, so she hadn't mentioned it. But she was stunned to discover that it wasn't there. And something else that wasn't there was all the rumination, all the internal dialogue, all the internal babble, self-referential thinking. It had used to be like having a dictator in her head that was constantly, you know, telling her to do stuff, watch out for stuff, correcting her. And she was so used to having that constant stream of internal dialogue that she was completely stunned when it was silent on the inside. And one thought of concern emerged as to how am I going to get home, you know? But she discovered to her delight that, she still knew how to drive. And this lasted for a week and a half. Her kids still survived, they still got fed, she still went to her business meetings, she was still just as functional, but there was no self-referential thinking for a week. No internal dialogue, no reconstructing a past, no worrying about a future, none of that stuff for a week. And she discovered that she was fully functional. Now, of course, she had some practical in the moment thoughts, but none of that self-referential type thinking that revolves around a recreated past and a hallucinated future. After a week and a half, the tinnitus started coming back, not as intensely as it used to be, and some of the thinking came back to maybe 35% of where it used to be. But she still said that week and a half has changed my life forever. Because I used to think that the voice in my head was who I was. I used to think that the voice in my head, you know, made me perform and was essential to thriving and to being who I was. And now she had the profound discovery that without that self-referential thinking, without that voice, she was fully functional. So she saw that that stream of rumination was not essential to who she was. She saw that it was essentially just another program. You could call it the I program that's mostly concerned with talking to itself about itself most of the time. It thinks it's in charge, but it's not really in charge. We dubbed it together as the sports commentator. Here's a good analogy for it. If you watch the Olympics and you watch gymnastics and you listen to the sports commentators, let's say that you were naive and you came here as an experiment through a time machine and you never watched TV before, you could fall for the illusion that the sports commentators are making the action happen, that the sports commentators are, making the Olympic athletes do their somersaults and stuff like that, because there's some correlation, at least some of the time, between what the sports commentators are saying and what the athletes at least just did. But the truth of the matter is that the sports commentators are not making the athletes perform. It really has nothing to do with it. If the folks in the sport commentating booth went silent, the Olympic athletes would still be doing their somersaults and would still be doing their stuff. So this realization was quite profound for my clients. Now, over the years, I've had less than 10 probably people who have had that particular experience to various degrees. And it's always been profound when people make that discovery. Of course, there are, through meditation and through various experiments, ways of helping people kind of see through that. But here's a very interesting hypnotic experiment that you can do in a group or with a group of clients, and also with a single client, if they have enough hypnotic capacity to at least create a context where someone may have such a discovery. So a couple of years ago, I hypnotized a pair of identical twins. And these guys were doing all sorts of psychological testing, IQ tests and, big five personality tests and, to see, to kind of attempt to map out, who they were, so to speak, or what was essential to who they were. So I worked with one of them as a client, and he was very enthusiastic about the work that I did, and he asked if he could bring his identical twin brother in, uh, just to have an experience of some of the stuff that I was doing. And I said to them, look, since you guys are doing all this stuff, how about I do hypnosis and kind of test your capacity to do various phenomena? Given that you're identical twins, I've never done this before, would be very, very interesting to see what happened. By the way, I have a video called Hypnotizing Identical Twins on the Provocative Hypnosis channel if you want to take a look. Now, very interestingly, one of them turned out to be an extremely good hypnotic subject, and the other one was not really a good hypnotic subject at all, which was interesting given the same, genetic. They scored very similar in IQ tests and quite a few other things, but here they were very different. And some of their personality tendencies were quite different as well. Now, with the guy who had a lot of hypnotic talent or capacity, I first suggested that the number 4 would be gone. And, I had him open his eyes and he counted 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. I was surprised to discover that he kind of had 11 fingers. And I could see that this was a really real experience to him. So I suggested to him that when he came out of the hypnotic experiment or out of hypnosis, so to speak, whenever he heard me mention the word hamburger, he would feel a compulsion, an urge to walk over to the window and to open the window. And every time he heard the word hamburger, the compulsion and the urge would increase. And I also suggested that he have amnesia for that particular suggestion. So he came out of the hypnosis. We had a casual conversation, me and him and his brother. And I started casually talking about how I was hungry and, how, they have some nice hamburgers down the street and what type of hamburgers they might like, and so on and so forth. And you could see my client begin to kind of twitch in the chair and scan for the window. And I kept talking about hamburgers. And then he started moving towards the window. And I said, well, what are you up to? What are you doing? And he said, I'm going to open the window. And I said, why? And I kind of stopped him. I kind of not quarreled with him, but stopped him. and he got very irate, very irritated. And when I said, "Why do you have to open the window?" He just made up a lot of stuff about how it was so hot in here and humid, and his brother was belly laughing. This was because he was so sincere about these explanations that he was giving about why he had to open the window. Now, at the cue, which I think was the word waffle, if I remember correctly, that I told him before, and that when I say the word waffle, he will just remember everything. When I offered that cue, he gave me the most profound look of surprise, and he chuckled and he laughed until he was crying. Like he thought it was he thought it was hilarious, the whole thing. Now, but here's the interesting thing that I did with these guys, and that you can do with a client is I said, look, isn't it fascinating that the thoughts, the storyteller that seems to be you, like the thoughts, the storyteller that seems to be you, that makes up all these reasons for why you have to open the window, and who seems to think that it's in charge of the whole thing, actually is just an afterthought, actually had nothing to do whatsoever with what was going on. Meaning, the reasons this storyteller created for why he had to open the window had nothing to do with the post-hypnotic suggestion that I had given him. This I thought, this after the fact ad hoc entity I thought that arose after the fact and claimed to be the initiator of the action, and who offered all these rationales for why the window had to be opened, was like a sports commentator, was an afterthought, was not in fact who he is. It's like the sports commentator. It's like the sideshow. Now, I remember back in 1998 when I first was part of doing this experiment with someone. It was so profound. Uh, I was actually relieved that I didn't seem to have that much hypnotic capacity, that I couldn't experience that, because I thought, man, these highly hypnotizable folks, they're fucking nuts. They're crazy. They're just crazy. But the more I did these sorts of experiments, and the more that I studied, memory, and the more I meditated, the more I realized that no, this is actually the human condition. I'll tell you a funny story from my own life. This was back in 2000 and I think 12. I was doing a seminar, a provocative hypnosis seminar in Amsterdam, and I went to sleep at the hotel. I think I was supposed to be awoken at 8 by the alarm bell in the morning, and I think I was supposed to be picked up at 8:45 by the promoter, in the reception. So I went to sleep that night, and I woke up with a feeling that I must have slept for like 12 hours or something. If you ever had that feeling of just knowing that you've been gone for a long, long, long time. And I looked at my watch, and it said 9 in the morning. And I was like, oh shit. I called downstairs. I said, is there a person there asking for me? And the receptionist was like, no. And I was irritated at the receptionist because I'd ordered a wake up call for the morning. I said, dude, where's my wake up call? You were supposed to wake me up, and this is unprofessional. And I gave the receptionist a little rant about professionalism, and so on and so forth. And he said, yeah, but it's for later. And I was like, no, it was for 8 o'clock in the morning. I hung up, rushed into the shower, showered, looked at the watch periodically. Now it was like 5 minutes past 9, 8 minutes past 9, got dressed, started running down the hallway. And then I looked out and I thought, man, it's dark. Like it's really, really dark to be, 9 o'clock in the morning. So it was something that was kind of stirring. Took the elevators downstairs, came into the lobby, saw that it was remarkably dark and quiet and silent, which seemed bizarre for, 10 past 9 in the morning. And then the big aha moment where I looked up at the watches above the reception and it said, I saw that it said 11 minutes past 3, 3 at night. And then I looked at my own watch again and I saw that my own watch also said 11 minutes past 3 at night. And I looked at the receptionist and I said, it's 11 minutes past 3 at night, isn't it? Like that watch is accurate. And he was like, yeah. And I looked at him and I profoundly apologized, for my bad manners and for my mistake. And he said, don't worry, you probably had a long flight. And I was like, nah, 2 hour flight, not even that. And it was like, oh, yeah, okay. But this was a kind of not that shocking experience because I've had similar experiences in the past, but once the brain kind of believes something, the storyteller that comes up has a tendency to create stories to defend or explain or rationalize or build a case for the belief. So as soon as I believed I must have slept at least 12 hours, my brain actually turned 3 o'clock at night into 9 o'clock in the morning. And as a result of this, uh, the storyteller that came up and constructed and projected unprofessional receptionists and all sorts of stuff uh, really had nothing to do with what had happened previously. So this is something you can easily see too if you meditate. The Buddha used to say, something along the lines of, in the seeing, there's just the seen, in the hearing, there's just the heard, in the cognizing, there's just the cognition, meaning there's no self behind it. There's no I that's doing it. The I that says I see or I hear or I think is actually an ad hoc entity. It's actually an afterthought, meaning at the moment of seeing, the I thought isn't there. At the moment of hearing, the I thought isn't there. The I thought kind of appears between these other, in the downtime, between these other creative ideas and these perceptions and these sensations, and creates a story of somehow having created it and being responsible for it and being the entity that it all revolves around. But this is illusory. Now, why is this? Why bother with this stuff? Well, as I've said previously on these videos, thoughts and feelings only tend to really disturb us when they look like a self, when it looks as if we are fused with the thoughts, and when it looks as if we're responsible for them and that they say something unique about us. So anything you can do in your own life or with a client to help people just have a glimpse, just have a little glimpse into the magic trick behind this illusion can just free up a lot of bandwidth and, you know, reduce the unnecessary psychological suffering that we seem to be moving around with. So this particular hypnotic experiment is a gold mine to help someone just have a little glimpse, just have a little glimpse into discovering that they're not their thoughts, they're not who they think they are, and they're not actually the voice in the head. So I invite you to test this out for yourself. And I invite you to deeply consider how various hypnotic phenomena and how various hypnotic experiments can be used as a learning context with the hope of helping someone discover the illusory nature of the self. So, any comments, any questions, feel free to post them. If these ideas resonate with you, go to provocativehypnosis.com. If you want to do change work with me, you can see the client page. If you're interested in training with me, I have two events coming up in London and in Berlin. Go to the seminar page. And if you're looking for a mentor, have a look at the mentoring page. These sorts of experiments is a way of kind of bridging the best of Western psychology and change work, NLP, hypnosis, that type of stuff, with the meditative Eastern traditions. So you can kind of have the best of both worlds. All right, till next time, enjoy.